Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the leadership of the Free Market Foundation. I see we have the chair, Ayanda Kumalo. We've got Leon Lowe, the executive director. We've got Nick Franges and Carol. Welcome. To our guest of honor, my brother Bonang, and family here. And I see also all the people at BLSA who know that not attending the event of your boss can be career limiting, are all here. Welcome, colleagues. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, my intention in standing here is to be just to welcome you to this building to Discovery. And I do so on behalf of Adrian, Barry, and the entire Discovery team. You are indeed warmly welcome. It is indeed a great honor for us to host you this afternoon on an occasion that recognizes an individual who's an inspiration to so many. Our country, particularly at this time, is crying out for visionary leaders, inspirational leaders, but morally upright and courageous leaders. We regard you, our special guests, as part of those in our country who are in constant search and who are ready to recognize the leaders that we need at this time. And we don't take it for granted that you saw it befitting to spend your time with us today. Today we celebrate an achievement by someone who, especially in the past few years, has really shown what it means to take responsibility when the time calls for you to. But I guess what has made it very easy for you, Bonang, is that this is something that you've done for the better part of your life. The person we are honoring here today has proven to be a beacon of hope, a guiding light, and an inspiration to many young people in our country. But of late, he has stand right in the front trenches of the business community when our country needed precisely that. I would like to thank the Free Market Foundation for this initiative, and of course for honoring us by asking us to host this very important occasion. Nguki wa Thiong'o, in his book, Wizard of the Crow, says, "Your own actions are a better mirror of your life than the actions of all your enemies put together." Our country has produced many great leaders. Our country today stands truly at the crossroads. It is therefore very important for us all the time, across the many divides that characterize our society, to hold hands together and try to do what is right for our country and be true to all the aspirational words that are written in our common compact, our Constitution. We are indeed extremely honored to host you, but I would really like to particularly thank Shamim and her team. Shamim is your real host here today. Always professional, always always professional. Shamim, we really appreciate you do so much to uplift the image of Discovery, and we are so grateful. And we're so grateful to you, your gracious self, and the team that you lead. It is now my honor to invite the Luminary Award Chair, Nick, to the stage. Thanks, Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, can I add the thanks to the Free Market Foundation, to Ayanda, Discovery, and particularly Shamin. I've worked with many people. You are amongst the top. Well done. Fantastic. Apologies from Dr. Sam Matsunyani and Richard Maponya, who were planning on being with us today, but they pass their best wishes to you, Bonang. The award given every year by the Free Market Foundation is a recognition that society, and South Africa in particular, is moving into a very contradictory phase, as is the world, the United States and everywhere. The forces on the left and the forces on the right are in contention with each other. The middle ground is under threat everywhere. And in that situation, the responsibility of high office could not be higher. And that responsibility requires leadership, competence, in every respect and at all levels. We've introduced the Luminary Award every year to people who are chosen for their outstanding contributions to society and the cause of freedom, not just in South Africa, but internationally. You saw there were 3 international awards that have been made, but in a specific area of activity. The Luminary Awards are intended to recognize outstanding, virtuous actions on the part of extraordinary individuals, especially of actions undertaken under difficult political circumstances. And it is people like Bonang Mohale that society turns to, and thank goodness we have many of them in South Africa. I'd like to go into Bonang's background briefly. Bonang, I hope you'll excuse not reading everything on your resume. It would be the main meal if I was to do that. This is a summary. He's known for his patriotism and his active role in seeking to advance the country's interests. Currently, he's Chief Executive Officer of Business Leadership South Africa, a forum which brings together the leadership of South Africa's most successful and influential big business, multinational investors, to exchange ideas, facilitate effective dialogue with government and other stakeholders, and advocate for pro-business, economically sustainable policies and programs. From January 2009 till June 2017, Mr. Mohale was the Vice President of Upstream and Chairman of Shell South Africa, where he was Chairman of the Board of Shell. Up to December 2008, he spent 8 years as Chief Executive Officer of Drake & Skull, an integrated facilities management company owned by the Tsebo Outsourcing Group. Till May 2003, he was Chief Executive, Shared Services and Associated Companies of Sanlam, a member of the Exco, Alternate Director of Sanlam Limited Main Board, Chairman of the Board of TASC, a Director of Inofin, Gensec Property Services and Fundamo. Until 2002, he was the Chief Executive, Corporate Marketing of Sanlam. Until 2001, he was the Executive Vice President of South African Airways, responsible for strategic alliances, network management and global services. From 1996, he was Managing Director of Otis, the world's biggest and oldest elevator company, where he spent 5 years, and in 1997 was the winner of the Black Management Forum's Progressive Company of the Year Award, with responsibilities for South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Botswana, and Namibia. He served on the Management Committee of South Europe, Middle East, and West Africa. In 1994, he joined Sandoz Products, now known as Novartis, as Head Public Affairs and Communication, and a member of the ExCo reporting to the Chief Executive Officer. He's currently a Director of FCB, Hollard, Swiss Re, First Rand, Airports Company, and the National Business Initiative. Before calling on Ayanda Khumalo, Chairman of the FMF, to officially introduce Bonang, I'd just like to finish on the note of integrity, because that is what I believe Ayanda stands for. Dr. Stephen Carter, who is an associate professor at Yale, defined integrity this way. It's three things. Firstly, knowing the difference between right and wrong, and that's probably 90% of the population. Acting on the difference between right and wrong, and the number falls off dramatically, probably to about 20%, and particularly speaking out on the difference between right and wrong, and that is a very, very small percentage. Bonang is a person who has done exactly that. He's fearless, and he's had the courage of his convictions to swim against the tide and talk the truth. I introduce you to Ayanda Khumalo. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for that introduction of our honored guest, Bonang Mohale. I think it's fair to say that I and the Free Market Foundation and your committee could not think of a better person for this award at this time. I think you heard for yourselves the achievements of Bonang, and we all know that at this time, when South Africa is at what I describe as the crossroads, economically certainly, we need men like him. So it's left to me to hand over this award. It's in the form of a certificate that I'll hand over to Bonang. Bonang, can I call you forward, please? So I can hand this over to you. We need to be in front of the camera. So I'm now going to ask Bonang to just put that certificate down and then come forward and just give us his speech. Thank you.
Eminence, Excellencies, most distinguished guests. At the time that the world is converging and disintegrating at the same time, in 2002, Michael Mandelbaum, one of America's leading foreign policy thinkers, building upon what Woodrow Wilson proclaimed more than a century ago, wrote an illuminating and thought-provoking piece of work, The Ideas That Conquered the World in the 21st Century. He argued that three ideas dominate the world in the 21st century. Peace as the preferred basis for relations between and among different countries. Democracy as the optimal way to organize political life. And the free markets as the indispensable vehicle for the creation of wealth.
the free market has become the most widely accepted institution in all of human history. The rise of the free markets holds the key to a peaceful and democratic future. He charted the course and explained the interconnectedness of ideas, of politics, and economics. Of course, there is no country in the world that practices capitalism in its purest form. Capitalism's greatest historic strength has been its ability to reform and change as social needs and democratic demands have shifted. Democratizing capitalism is precipitated by the fact that our country and our political economy appears to be grinding to a slow halt. The institutions on which this political economy is built are crumbling, and standard economic concepts and methods now seem inadequate. Looking self-critically at our present, comparing the world we now know against the world we imagined we would be in at that poignant moment in the history of this country as we queued and voted for the very first time. The South Africa we have all been praying for. The South Africa of Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela's dreams. There is no doubt that collectively we have not succeeded in eradicating the legacy of apartheid and the 350 years of colonialism. The economy is on its knees. Young black graduates are roaming the streets hopelessly. Inequality has widened. Racism is at an all-time high. Public schooling has collapsed. Public health continue to fail the poor and the vulnerable. Crucial infrastructure is in decay. Lawlessness has now become epidemic. Our job is not just to explain it away, to mask it, nor to defend it. Also in retreat is the belief in a liberal global economy. It was Larry Diamond of the Hoover Institution who propounded the idea of a democratic recession. Roberto Fua of the University of Melbourne and Harvard's Yasha Maung have referred to the democratic disconnect, pointing to a depressing loss of belief in democracy in the US, Europe, and indeed the rest of the globe. But in its latest annual report, the Freedom House states that a total of 67 countries suffered net declines in political rights and civil liberties in the year 2016, compared with 36 that registered net gains. This marked the 11th consecutive year in which declines outnumbered improvements. In brief, the Industrial Revolution has ultimately led to a political revolution from autocracy towards democracy. Moreover, periods of globalization have been associated with the spread of democracy, and periods of deglobalization have been associated with the reverse. It was Harvard's Benjamin Friedman who argued that periods of prosperity strengthen democratization and vice versa. Since 1820, average global real incomes per capita have risen 13-fold, and even further in high-income countries. As economies progress, people needed to be educated. Such changes and mass mobilization for industrialized warfare strengthen demands for political inclusion. In reverse, the financial crises that destroyed globalization in the 30s and damaged it after 2008 led to poverty, to insecurity, and to anger. Such feelings are not conducive to the trust necessary for a healthy democracy. At the very least, democracy requires confidence that winners will not use their temporary power to destroy the losers. If trust disappears, politics become poisonous. The link is not just empirical. Democracy and capitalism rest on an ideal of equality. Everybody must share in political decision making and do the best they can in the market. These freedoms were revolutionary not long ago. Yet deep conflicts also exist. Democratic politics depends on solidarity. Capitalists do not care about nationality. Democracy is local. Capitalism is essentially global. Democratic politics is founded on the equality of citizens. Capitalism cares very little about the distribution of riches. Democracy says all citizens have a voice. Capitalism gives the rich by far the loudest. Electorates desire some economic security. Capitalism is prone to boom and bust. Wolff accentuates this point that the tensions between national democracy and global capitalism can be ruinous, as the 30s have demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt. Yet history also shows that the two systems do go together, albeit uneasily. This is not to argue that all market economies are democracies, or that all market economies must be globalized. It is to argue that stable democracies also possess at least reasonably open market economies. No alternative ways of managing the affairs of complex societies has proved workable. The aim must now be to manage capitalism so that it supports democracy, and to manage democracy so that it makes global capitalism work better for all. Today, we're making a mess of this marriage. We must do much better. We must force ourselves to move much more from a production and consumption narrative towards a more sharing and caring narrative. We must express hope that the future-oriented dialogue of all key stakeholders will create a community of shared interest and ultimately one of shared purpose. The ethical basis for capitalism must be that it offers better life chances for a majority of citizens. Thinking of both capitalism and human rights in one breath. After our 6th free, fair, and credible national elections on Wednesday, the 8th of May, and the subsequent inauguration of the 4th democratically elected President of the Republic on Saturday, the 25th of May, it is poignant to remind ourselves as to why we have the best constitution by just glancing at the preamble to the South African Constitution. And it starts by saying, we, the people, recognize the injustices of the past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, on social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people, and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all the citizens and free the potential of each person. And lastly, build a united and democratic South Africa able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. It ends by saying, Nkosi sikelele Africa. May God protect our people. So we must all collectively do much more to eradicate the nightmare and the deep horrors that rendered black people and women both victims and survivors. Dehumanized, dispossessed, violated, oppressed, and repressed. Race and identity still predetermine one's social and economic station in life. Whiteness has been constructed as an opposite of blackness. Social compacting was with white men. Unsurprising, therefore, that 25 years after the legal end of apartheid, South Africa remains deeply racist, sexist, patriarchal, misogynistic, and xenophobic. Othering and bigotry continue to be weakened by conversation staples. It was George Orwell who implored us that to think clearly, we need to speak clearly. As long as color affects life chances, being colorblind means not seeing reality. To rise above racism of the past, we must acknowledge it. It is hard for an individual or a country to evolve past discomfort if the source of the anxiety is only discussed in hushed tones. But the South African Constitution sets all of us a higher standard. The Bill of Rights holds all equal, outlaws discrimination on any grounds, and protects the right to dignity for all. Freedom of opportunity and freedom from domination with individual agency and a stake in the economy with own capital is the very least we can guarantee. What then are the sources of wealth in our historical context without large transfers of land and asset ownership? Because only 5% of our people own individual land, and more than 80% have absolutely no assets. History is replete with examples that an economy inherits a power relations. When natural resources are exploited for both economic and political purposes, what then should be the role of government? When other countries boast transformative interventions like sovereign wealth funds, education coupons, reparations, basic income grants, in South Africa, poverty still has both a black and feminine face. We are still struggling with the moment of integration, where identity has moved, where the Japanese have been conferred honorary whites. The Chinese have been conferred not whites status. Commingling has replaced the Immorality Act. The English and the Afrikaners were simply merged into white. Momentum for a better life for all must be maintained. Most people just want to see incremental progress and also want to share in that momentum and in that progress. Again, history is a good teacher with attempts at various moments. The state of Alaska still sends everyone a check once a year. At the end of the USA Civil War, dealing with the fact that the Constitution allowed slavery. In 1865, General William T. Sherman made the promise that would come to be known as the 40 acres and a mule, redistributing a huge tract of Atlantic coastline to African Americans recently freed from bondage as a way of compensating them for suffering under slavery and other forms of racial injustice. President Abraham Lincoln and Congress gave their approval, and soon 45,000 freed women and men in the South had started to plant and build. Within months of President Lincoln's assassination, though, President Andrew Johnson rescinded the order and returned the land to its former owners. Congress made another attempt at compensation, but Johnson vetoed it. When the Northern Army moved through the South freeing slaves, the hatchet law was enacted with the dictum: a working man with a hatchet who could cut a tree and turn right. Even in Britain, Margaret Thatcher gave council houses to workers. East Germans were given tangible economic benefits as some kind of reparations. Malaysia's Bumiputra were intentionally included in the economic mainstream, thereby transforming their quality of life. In some European countries and Japan, baby bonds are given at birth to encourage having more children to fight the real risk of aging populations. Land is the first means of production. Government must ensure a thriving property-owning democracy that is underpinned by home ownership by all, in control of their own land and therefore their own destiny, where asset ownership as part of belonging to society is guaranteed. We must be quite purposeful about how we think deeply about our pre-distribution past and why distribution must be completed in our lifetime in order for our children to thrive in a post-redistribution epoch. We must boldly and decisively deal with the dilemma between our painful past and our hopeful future. We must do more to reimagine and develop our own language, our own meaning of productivity, of value addition and returns. What then should be the role of labor? Wouldn't it be fantastic when labor can really care about what is in South Africa's best interest and care about our global competitiveness, thereby freeing itself of ideology for its own sake and genuinely be concerned about the well-being and resilience of their own members in the long term. To a large extent, labor is already an employer and shareholder in most companies through a plethora of union-owned investment companies and the government employee pension fund that owns the PIC, the biggest asset manager in the continent, with about 2 trillion assets under management. With such an arsenal, labor can genuinely drive infrastructure investment and transformation of the boards of directors and the executives in this country. Instruments like employee share option programs and shared prosperity can be a palpable reality for the majority of workers, transforming ordinary workers into serious economic players, active participants rather than passive recipients, producers versus consumers, givers versus just takers, to give real meaning to a shared sense of prosperity and wealth. Where globalization has undermined local communities, labor can be a powerful mitigating agent. There are instructive lessons offered by the French Revolution that gave the world the 3 famous freedoms, namely liberté, égalité, fraternité. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. For us, liberty is our long struggled for freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of association, but most importantly, freedom from hunger. Equality of individuals, and in particular, relational equality, but most especially the power relations around the place of work. It is the last one that is the most profound for me, fraternité, this notion of brotherhood, that we care about each other and one another. It is hugely premised on trust, the reliance to do what I said I would do, that I believe you deeply care about my interest, because in Polynesian society, status was accorded on what you contributed rather than just what you have. What then should be the role of business? The definition of a successful company is one that develops a corporate soul, not just a group of people gathered together for a joint commercial purpose. This is much more than the sum of its many and varied parts. It is the ethos that drives it and makes it special. This requires not only doing right by the business, but also the societies in which it operates. John Nesbitt, the American author, accentuates this point when he said, the most exciting breakthroughs of the 21st century will not occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. Politics determines economics. The role of business, therefore, must surely be to survive. As my good friend Mark J. Lambetti teaches us all the time, deliver shared value, deliver on what it says and promises. Do no harm. Make the world a better place. Give the world ethical leadership and true engagement, and grow our own timber by taking education much more seriously than we've done up until now. Leadership is about mastering courage to shape one's sense of character and making a difference. Being able to lead and persuade others as to why change is necessary, why tomorrow on a composite basis will be substantially better than today, that the pain of change will be much less than the pain of staying the same. How our common humanity could benefit from the desired outcomes, and why the effort is worth the investment of sacrifice, dedication, and resources. Leadership is about having a compelling vision, some sort of a courage and integrity. It is about helping our people to be better able to see around corners, to always ask the question, so what else is missing? Business is no longer on the periphery of development. It is intricately intertwined with society and its citizenry role. Business must do well by doing good, because it cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. Broader societal issues of justice, of fairness, of equality, and peace are at the core of business and its desired outcomes. Business must adopt socially responsible, transparent, and values-led practices with all its stakeholders. Business and sustainable development are now one and the same thing. Business cannot continue to be indifferent to the plight of the most vulnerable. Business must be deeply committed to the ethics, to integrity, to respect, and moral values. It must be committed to doing the right thing, not just doing things right. It is Archbishop Emeritus and human rights activist Mpilo Desmond Tutu accentuated this point when he said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. There is a need to restore trust, faith, and confidence in business and government. Business must work hard, much harder. What a strange and wonderful change that would be. Ladies and gentlemen, I love my wife. By His grace, love, and mercy, I thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful speech, Bonang. the combination of subjects such as democracy, capitalism, labor, government, business is not easy, and in many times it's controversial. But I think all of us there got something for ourselves, what we must do. It's not about them, but it should also be about me and about us and what we must do. And there's certainly a message for all of us there, so that we can build a caring society in this difficult time that our country finds itself, especially economically. We have to produce the wealth for all these things to happen. And business produces wealth, but it must be done right and must be done fairly. And thank you very much for that speech and that reminder, Bonang. It remains to me now to thank you all for coming, to thank Bonang for accepting this award. He could have refused, you know. I wouldn't, but he could have. And to thank Discovery for hosting us here at this wonderful venue. Thank you very much. I'm told that lunch is served. I think it's somewhere out there. Is that right, ladies? Thank you very much for attending. Have a good afternoon.